This is Real Mammoth, where we talk about real stories and real estate. My name is Joseph Bogorad, and today I'm joined by Mammoth Lakes town manager of over 10 years, and tomorrow is his last day. Dan, welcome to the show.
Hey, my pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you so much. I want to start from the beginning. Let's kind of get into it, where kind of what brought you here and maybe one of your first memories of Mammoth.
Well, one of my first memories was actually working in Southern California. I should have two, but working in Southern California, a couple of cities there, and actually coming up to Mammoth to ski. Also in junior college from Wyoming, I did a ski trip to Salt Lake City, Tahoe, Mammoth, and then repeated it. So the skiing here has always been kind of an attraction, and just the beauty of the area. And we were at one point looking, Mammoth actually had a job opening, and I'd actually looked at one point in time going, hey, it'd be cool to go to Mammoth sometime. And then just as circumstances worked out from another agency, I was working in the city of Grass Valley. And then opportunity for Mammoth came up and be able to come here. So it was not a difficult decision to come and apply for the job and do an interview. Mm-hmm. Then I was brought on as an interim manager for a few months, and then made permanent, and 10 plus years later, here we are.
Here we are. And were you born in California?
No, I actually was born in Wyoming, grew up in Cody, Wyoming, and following retirement, I will be moving back there for family reasons. Mom and brother and sister nearby, and my wife's family is in the Bozeman, Montana area and Billings, Montana area. So it's a family draw to go back, but love the mountains. We're 50 miles out of Yellowstone National Park, so still just another beautiful area to be in. So that's really, I think, the attraction of Mammoth, both the beauty around it, and frankly, I like working in small communities. You get to know people, which some folks figure that's good and bad. It's nothing to have a conversation in the grocery store about something going on in the town, and I really enjoy that engagement level.
And is Bozeman kind of a small town?
I went to college in Bozeman. It's actually getting larger now, 50, 60,000. Cody's about 10,000 where I'll be living. Oh. Growing up there is about 5, so...
Oh, wow.
Small community.
After college, you came to California?
Yeah.
You did? Okay.
Yeah. Right out of grad school, a Master of Public Administration. Worked in 2 cities in Southern California. Worked in Douglas County, Nevada, which is Minden-Gardnerville, if you know the area, for over 13 years, 5.5 in Grass Valley, and then 10 years, 5 months here in Mammoth Lakes.
And counting on down the time.
Yes.
And so
leap year.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, got one extra day in. And so when you went to college, you went to school for this specific
public
job.
administration, and looking at both federal, state, and local.
Okay.
And had a professor who really, the push there was, if you really want to make a difference, look at local government. It's painful at times. It's more real and more raw. But if you really want to make a difference in a community, in the government side, look at local government and said, that sounds cool.
And was that always in you? Was that in your DNA that you wanted to help people and be in public service?
I think so, yeah. From, do different things that way growing up. And I think from college standpoint, political science was my undergrad degree, and then public administration. I think that idea of just, making a difference, being a part of a community.
Do you remember a time maybe in your childhood that you did something nice for someone and it felt really good, and that kind of maybe changed your trajectory?
I don't know if there's any one thing but being brought up that way, it's about helping people. It's about being part of, get involved here with the theater level, pushing that. And that was part because my mother would go, hey, you're going to this play. We're going to go and listen to this music. We're going to go and do these things as part of the community, right? And so you got to know people that way. And then the other outreach efforts was through the local church and stuff we were involved with in doing that. And I still do that here. Made 11 trips to Uganda the last several years. Missions trip there, working with orphans and planning churches and working and doing different things. That's some humanitarian support. But that type of outreach and that type of giving was just kind of built into us growing up. So it was a natural to be involved at this level.
Were your parents in public service as well?
No, well, I should say yes. My mother was a school teacher when she was younger. After she had 4 kids and stuff, not so much. But my dad was a pipeline welder, worked in the oil fields and different things of that nature. But they were engaged in the community in different ways. and very supportive of us doing that, whether it was sports or band or, Cub Scouts, whatever it was. Yeah, supportive of saying, let's get engaged, be out there.
So it sounds like they kind of made that a focal point in you and your siblings to raise you as someone who's going to contribute.
Yes, I would say that's true. Yeah, it's very much. You can be more than you are by being involved in a community.
Right. And I got this email from the town. It was probably the longest email I've ever got from the town, and had all your accomplishments. And there is so much to talk about there. And there's a few that I highlighted, but maybe let's start with your proudest accomplishment within the last 10 years.
Yeah, and I think it's a broad statement, then I'll talk about some specifics. But as coming into Mammoth Lakes, they just gone through a very difficult time with having to file for bankruptcy and a lot of budgetary issues and challenges that way. So one of the things we really set about doing, I'm going to use we a lot because it's not just about me. It's the other staff in the town. It's other employees. It's the town councils. I think I worked with 15 different council members over the 10 years. So when we look at that and go, one, how do we really build a stronger financial base? And we were successful in doing that, partly by how we manage finances, but also just the beauty and the success of the region and Mammoth itself in terms of being a beautiful place to come and visit and play, and that revenue source coming out of that visitor base. So building a strong financial base was huge because that then allowed us to go back and say, how are we going to invest in the community? Not so much invest back in the organization, although we do that because we want to have good quality employees. We want to have them well trained. We want them to be good at what they do. But we also want them to have a community focus. I don't care if we're paying bills or plowing streets or policing or parks or whatever. How do you get that community-based focus, especially in the tourism economy? Growing up in one near Yellowstone National Park, you start to learn the value of that visitor. You want to treat them right. At the same side of that, you really want to make sure your local community is treated well because they go together, and that's what makes us prosperous, frankly, as a tourism destination resort.
And speaking of the finances, so Mammoth makes around 80% of its revenue from transient occupancy tax. Is that
from a budgetary standpoint, it's about 60% of our budget. At the end of the year, it's more because we don't budget everything we think will come in. And that's how we've been able to go back and invest in housing. We've been able to go back and invest in parks and recreation and new facilities. That's how we can invest in childcare, how we can invest in theater, how we can invest in roads and MUPs. And all of those things is built off of that financial basis, but it is highly dependent on transient occupancy tax revenues.
Did that ever make you nervous as a town manager?
Not really. As close as we got was the pandemic with COVID. Okay, we're going to shut down travel, basically, overnight stays in Mammoth, and that is our bread and butter. So two different things coming out of that. We took a very aggressive approach in our budget and reduced cost and did a lot of cutting and those types of things. But also because we had built up a budget, we knew we could live off of our reserves if we needed to, a way to kind of have a soft landing if we needed to, knowing that this wasn't going to be forever. Hopefully. Anyway, the plan was, hey, how do you survive out of a year or 2 years if you have to? And it was actually built into the system, so we could actually have that soft landing if we needed it, and we're still in that position today, even stronger, actually. So if you have to weather a downturn or something like that, and being involved in Douglas County, Nevada, Lake Tahoe, again, highly dependent on tourism. Right. Grass Valley, not as much, but growing up, living in a community dependent on tourism. So it's kind of that DNA from that. So you recognize that need. But again, when you look at the destination we have and you look at summer and winter, people wanting to be here and coming through, it's somewhat resilient from that perspective, just because of the closeness to the LA market, Southern California. That's right. And you look at the beauty and just what we have to offer from a recreational outdoor standpoint, it's less of a concern about really having a hard hit. It's more about how do we sustain where we're at and how do we do so very responsibly and very carefully, making sure we don't overstretch. Cities have done that. I've gone through the budget cuts in every agency I've worked in. Never enjoyable.
Yeah, budget cuts. Yeah. And so it sounds like you've worked in a lot of other smaller towns. Has Mammoth been the smallest town you've worked in?
It's, in a sense, yeah. I think, because the other one was 50, 100,000 population down south. And then Douglas County, Nevada was about 50, but no incorporated cities in that community. And Grass Valley was about 12,000.
What's unique about Mammoth as a town and the people who are here versus the other places you worked for?
I think probably two things. One, the town itself grew up as a visitor-based community. You look at the housing stock. You look at just how the shops and what we have on the street. You don't have a niche market of small manufacturing, substantial area there. You don't have the scope of retail. And so the fabric of how the town operates from an employee base, it's hospitality based, whether that's the hotel side or short-term rentals or restaurants. Even the retail is focused on that primarily, ski shops, et cetera. So that uniqueness of being overly dependent on that in one sense is unique. The other side of that, I think the people that live here, because of where it is and what it is, they're a hardy lot, to put it bluntly. I mean, but they're also, I guess they're a community-based in the sense, if we'll argue over things, but if you need help, a lot of the folks in this community step up at a heartbeat and say, what do you need? And so I will argue over stuff at times in the community. I think it was Rusty Gregory said, we're really great. We're going to circle the wagons and shoot at each other. Yeah. But when push comes to shove and you really need something and you need help, or there's elements in the community coming together, as a small community, they do that. It really is neighbors helping neighbors. It's families coming together to help families. And we tried to model that in the town when we invested through the pandemic, in rental assistance, investing back into some creative small business loans, grants actually out to some of the small businesses. After the last big winter, here's some grants to help offset big snow removal costs for small businesses. The small business is kind of the backbone of the community from a element of the vast majority of it. You have Mammoth Mountain Resorts, which has been a great partner in a lot of this work. But you turn around and say, how do you keep these small businesses going? And again, you get to know people in them, you talk to them, and you hear their stories, right. And they're here because they love this place.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that, because I feel like a lot of the community, we're like that probably because of the sports we do, right? Maybe we're climbing and, you have someone's life in your hands on a rope. Yeah. Or, we're skiing and your friend could fall or, even get trapped in an avalanche. Like we need to be there for each other. But there is like this sense of maybe sentiment where, everything's nice. It's Thursday. It's quiet. Friday evening hits and it's a different town. It feels like maybe
that's right.
It's LA again, right?
Yeah, you don't go into Vaughn's at 5:30 on a Friday evening.
Yeah, we've learned that the hard way.
Yeah. You wait.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you go early in the morning.
Yeah.
So,
and I think it's maybe, and kind of my thinking about the housing crisis, and there's a lot of, it's almost like it's a human thing where it's almost us versus them in a sense. And so maybe, what would you say to a local who has been kicked out of housing, who has seen all their friends leave, who has slept in their car? What would you say to that person and to the visitor? Is it like a work together kind of thing? Is that too cliche, or what would you tell them?
It's not. I think it's the challenge there, honestly, dealing with people who are working 1, 2, or 3 jobs. They came here because they love this place and want to be able to recreate, and then they have no time to do it. Mm-hmm. Is extremely frustrating for people. That element, the lack of employees, I know challenges a lot of our local businesses. They're happy to get the people they can get in and get them trained and help them work and do those things. So that is a struggle, and that's not unique to Mammoth as a tourism destination resort. Where we're unique, especially in the housing side, is we don't really have a up valley, down valley solution. You go to a lot of other Western U.S. resorts, you have within an hour or so away, you have places that are more expansive for housing or other opportunities, or you're closer to a larger metropolitan shopping or destination. You think of the Salt Lake area or, a lot of the Vail, Aspen areas. You got Denver not that far away, or some of the other elements. We are in the middle of everything but close to nothing, if you can put it that way, So it's the isolation here, I think, that creates that challenge. And from the visitor side, part of that is reminding people to look because it's the folks here that are serving you that make the difference of your experience of coming to Mammoth. If you're going to go to a restaurant, how are you treated? You're going to be up on the mountain, how are you treated? You're going to be out, just hiking or something, and how do you interact with people? If you need medical services or if you need fire or police services, it's how do we interact? So it's symbiotic in the relationship. And one of the things for me personally, I like to travel and do stuff. And so you're looking at things when you're out there. How does this experience relate to what Mammoth is? How do I want to be treated when I travel? And how do I treat those people who are providing a service? Right. I think at times we forget that. We get either, frustrated on both sides, or we get, almost angry in some cases. I think you see more of that in this day and age right now than it's healthy. And the other side of that, you see this expectation sometimes also that, I'm more important than anybody else. You get those attitudes now and again. And I think for the residents here in our local workforce, I think they're really good about seeing that and be able to respond to it appropriately. Again, you're meeting different people working in different shops here or different places, and they're kind of heart and soul of California, of America, if you want to call it that, but just good people. And they're making a living, they're making it work. The vast majority, I think, still enjoy why they're here. Some of them are definitely struggling with housing, and we understand that, and we're doing a lot of investment to address that. But we're not unique in that. For most, I'll say, destination resorts across the country, I know out west, you can pick up any magazine or newspaper in different places, and they will be talking about a housing shortage. My mother-in-law from Bozeman, Montana, a few years back was sending me these articles from the paper there, and you could change the name from Bozeman to Mammoth, and the article would be 90% the same.
Wow.
It's too expensive. There's no place. I can't get employees, et cetera. You just walk down the issues, and it was there. And I think the people in Mammoth, I think, have a good heart. And so as people come in, they understand the power of that visitor, what that means. That is our economic engine. And I do think for the vast majority, my experience in watching and listening, they treat people right.
That's a good point. And so what everyone says, we see a lot of stuff on social media and even just out in the town where a lot of people think that there's too much marketing for Mammoth. So is there a thing as too many visitors?
Not necessarily. I think that idea of, the visitor stuff, I'm sick of it. It's, hey, I can't make a left-hand turn. You want to plan your day so you make only right-hand turns. But that's a small part of the year. Think about the visitors throughout 365 days of the year and how often, driving over to do this interview, it was all the, 10-second wait to pull out onto the street.
Right.
So it is that peak thing that impacts that. And you do get that. I think we get spoiled when we live here, and it's not, again, unique to Mammoth. This is my backyard. I want to go play with nobody else. But if those other people aren't coming, then I'm not going to be here either because they're my bread and butter. If you don't have people coming up and buying real estate, you don't have people coming up and shopping in the stores, eating in the restaurants, everything that it takes to make the community work, you're going to be a challenge that way. And so I don't think it's too much marketing, but I think it is a matter of what does that marketing say? And I think we've done a good job at pivoting toward, yes, come to Mammoth, but respect it. Hug what you love type campaign. Kind of the real, unreal, real campaign. The idea of come up and see the beauty of what we have and respect it.
Right.
And I think growing up, that was driven into us. We'd go up hiking and camping, and if you packed it in, you packed it out. Right. You left it on the ground, you were told to pick it up. Oh, yeah. Those types of issues. So I think that mutual respect builds a lot. And so as I wouldn't say over-marketing. Yes, on a big weekend, do we feel overwhelmed? Yes. I'll say welcome to destination resorts around the world, not just in the U.S. here, but those peaking those days really helps us financially. It helps a lot of our businesses. You need that. And I think that messaging, though, it's not just come to Mammoth and spend money or come to Mammoth and play, but it's come enjoy, respect, and honor what you're seeing. And I think that's a message that we need to continue to push. come on up, be safe, be smart, have a good time, don't spend more than you can afford. I say spend more than you can afford, but you think about that whole issue that way, and think about where you like to travel. Think about where you want to go. Would you want to go there and go, by the way, we don't want you here? It's you can see that in other places, but so I don't think it's over marketing. I think it's the messaging that we want to be clear on of why we want you here and what we have to offer. It's federal public lands, right? It's stuff of that nature. It's a great experience. It's beauty. It is uniqueness, if you will.
If you see somebody throw a banana peel out the car window and there's still a chance to say something to them, what would you tell them?
Hey, please respect the place and pick up your trash. Idea, because that shows me a disrespect. Would you want me to throw that on your driveway? Would you want that in your environment? And the other side of that is you quietly just pick it up. I'll say it's not unusual to walk into work near the Vaughn's place, walking across the parking lot, and you pick up 5, 6, whatever, 2 or 3 pieces of the trash on the way across the parking lot because we respect where we work. Right.
And there's a difference between something that's biodegradable. You don't see any banana trees around Mammoth.
Right.
So that's a key indicator.
Yes.
You probably shouldn't leave that in the dirt.
Yeah, at least ultimately that will be biodegradable, but it's the plastic cup or it's the paper, it's the wrapper of something. Little things. I mean, stuff happens. You pick up a bunch of shopping receipts in the parking lot, for example. But the idea, if we all take that respect and do a little bit of that, it makes a big difference.
Right.
And when you've seen that the last few years really grow of trash cleanup, Trashy Thursdays, I think it is. Go out and help pick up trash and get a $50 gift card if you win the drawing. But of having people do that, and then it's amazing to me, a lot of trail days I've been involved with here, we're up doing stuff, the number of visitors that are engaged or new people to Mammoth, and they have a ball. And you end up picking up garbage, you end up doing good work, you do this, and all of a sudden you're making that community connection. Working in the dirt with people it's an amazing connection point.
And that's why one of the things that we heard a lot in the last town council meeting, a lot of people mentioned how you're the type of guy who goes out there, gets his feet dirty, his hands dirty, and people respect it. Yeah. And people are often surprised. Has there been a time where someone said something maybe like funny to you or how do you feel when you get out there and you're helping people?
Not so much saying something funny. I think some of the interesting things, it's like just recently at the play Clue, for example, I made it to the opening night and closing nights. That was fun, seeing the difference in the play a little bit. But afterwards, helping pick up chairs. And people just, oh, hey, thanks. And they appreciate it. The other one, we were at Chamber Music Unbound, and concert coming up this next weekend. So Saturday night here, Sunday night in down in Carson City at the college campuses. So check them out. Great music. Anyway, but we're doing something in there. You stand up and you end up helping put tables away and chairs away. And I was surprised they were actually doing a funding request through Measure U, basically one of our grant programs. And they actually had a note in there that said, yeah, the town manager was here and helped us put tables away. And yeah, okay. But often doing those things in different places here, it's not, I don't necessarily tell people who I am. It comes up in conversation, great, but we're doing cleanup days, so for trash and green waste, and we're helping people clean their cars out and dump out stuff. And somebody was there, and they introduced me to him. Hey, this is Dan, and he's our town manager. And then they kind of look at you like, what are you doing out here? Almost like, why are you out here helping people dump trash, if you will, or clean green waste up? And this is part of our community. This is what we do. And then seeing the same couple, a couple of weeks later, the lady was going, wait, I know you. Oh, you're the gentleman that was helping us dump our garbage. And I go, yeah, it was great. Anyways, you have a conversation. And, but I think it's, again, for me, doing that helps you connect with the community. And it's not about so much of who you are doing that. It's a personal value of going, I want to be connected in that. It's going to the Lions Club pancake breakfast. It is, going to whatever events are going on in town. It's being in the parade or whatever. And you're doing it, in some cases, it's part of the job, if you will. But it's stuff that I truly enjoy. And people don't have to know who I am or why I'm there. I'm there to enjoy this experience just like you are. Whether it's theater, whether it's music, or whether it's, something going on at the village or over at the Hayden Cabin, you're part of the community. And if you really enjoy that, you go out, you do it because you enjoy it. And then also you look and say, hey, we can make this better. Hey, here's a need that we can actually step into and make things happen. And so that's been a cool part of a lot of different things that we've done that some people most likely are not aware of, the things that we've done to try to help different events and things happen in the community. And that's the part that it feels good to do it. You're not doing it to say, hey, look, you're really doing it because it's the right thing to get done.
You said enjoy a lot. And for somebody who let's maybe talk about like a little more career development in just for a second. And if a lot of people have a job, right? And maybe they don't enjoy it, but it pays the bills. What do you have to say to those people?
One, I think if you really don't enjoy what you're doing, find something you do. You can put up doing anything for a period of time, but find something that actually gives you some meaning and purpose. Find something you enjoy. And work turns into, I call it plurk, P-L-O-R-K.
Okay.
It's two parts play, 3 parts work.
Okay.
And if you can find a job to do that, you'll enjoy it, and you'll make a difference. And what I do, I think a lot of times it is hard work, sometimes manually, but usually mentally. It's challenging. You're not going to make everybody happy with decisions and do that. But for me, coming back and you think about it, and even growing up working in a restaurant, mainly in the kitchen, but when people came back and said that was a really good meal, it gave you a sense of pride in what you did. And I think when you have that sense of pride in what you do, you have that sense of enjoyment of it, you're serving whatever level. Do that at a paper route, or do that in a restaurant, or do that, washing UPS trucks, other small part-time jobs going through school. You did good work and it felt good. You made a difference, and you wanted to connect in that. And I think for some people, it's like, if you're unhappy at work, what's going on outside of work as well? Are you just unhappy? Mm-hmm. Or is it truly the work that you really don't like? And I think that a lot of times, I think it's a choice. It's a strong faith that I have too. You go in, you go, hey, I enjoy what I do, and I'm going to choose to always see the glass half full. If it gets below that, the glass is too big, so get a smaller one, it's still half full. Anyway, different way of looking at life. But the idea there, I think, getting out and enjoying what you do is important. And you're not going to make everybody happy, and that's not the goal either. The goal is, am I satisfied in the work that I'm doing the right things? Am I helping things come together that are great for the community? And there'll be debates over that, whether right or wrong or not, but trying to make those good decisions through that process. Right. And so in doing that, find something, I'm assuming you enjoy what you do, like this blog.
I enjoy this, yeah.
So you do that and go, yeah, how do I really enjoy life? It's not just experiences, but it's actually joy. And I'll say not just happiness either, but you have this sense of, you put in a 60, 70-hour work week and you go, but we got a lot of stuff done. This felt good. We went through a massive winter a year ago. Lots of work, lots of different issues, lots of decisions, But at the end of the day, you go through that and go, this felt good. We did the right thing.
Yeah, and it seems like, no matter how hard, things get during the day-to-day, you can still go home, look back and say, hey, what's our purpose, right? You're like, I'm helping people, I'm helping this community move forward and hopefully make the right decisions. Yeah.
And I could say that, you go into some of your retail shops, when you're working with some of the folks who are working in there, you're going, you're really good at what you do. Thank you. And do we remember to say thank you? Right. To people? I think often we forget that. And it goes a long ways. Hey, I really appreciated your service, or, you're doing whatever out there. Are we appreciative of what other people are doing?
Absolutely.
And when you can turn around and, as I said in the beginning, we have done a lot of these things. It's not me. It is truly the town employees. It is our elected officials. It is the volunteers that we have engaged. And then it's also going, how do we make that difference in the community? Great discussion with Parks and Rec. How do we serve people, I'll say 1 to 100? We want to be able to touch all ages, all walks of life here in our recreational offerings. An idea would be we have something that everybody can take advantage of if they so choose to.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we push that out? It's not unique to Mammoth again, but a lot of the focus is on youth sports, very important element. But what do you do for those who, we had a lady named B who was an avid swimmer. She was over 80 years old at the pool. That feels good that pool is serving that age group.
Right.
Not to mention mommy and me learning how to swim. You look at the new community ice rink, years in the making. But it is so rewarding to go in there and you watch people skating or playing hockey. And again, ages all over the place. Mm-hmm. And you look at the smiles on faces. You look at families doing something out there together. And you look and go, yeah, this makes it worth it. You know, it's a tough road sometimes, but at the end of the day, what's that outcome?
Right.
And you go, yeah, that feels good.
Speaking of the CRC, Community Recreation Center, a lot of people have said things like, why did this money go to housing? Why did we need an Olympic-sized ice rink? Don't we have enough visitors? I'm sure you heard it all.
Yep.
And, can you tell us kind of the thought process of the
Sure.
CRC?
Yeah, definitely talking about the Community Recreation Center. One was looking at that. I mean, the discussion on the ice rink began, I think, in the late 90s. So it wasn't like a new idea. We had an outdoor rink that a lot of people went to. And you look at that back to meeting the needs of the community. We are not a one purpose or the old adage of a one-trick pony. Definitely recreation in the community here is a big thing. And so when you look at what was happening in an outdoor rink and moving snow and everything else and helping blow snow off of there and shoveling over there, to look at an indoor ice rink. And one of the reasons we did a Olympic-sized rink this summer, that'll be 3 equivalent courts of a gym. So you'll have all the different types of indoor sports, be it basketball or volleyball or badminton or pickleball or fill in the blank, soccer, futsal. You can actually use that Olympic-sized rink to do full indoor soccer. So it's much more versatile. And it's fun talking to people who play hockey and stuff. Hey, do you mind the bigger rink? And no, we're learning how to pass more. It's a different game a little bit. So, but you look at those types of things and you think about that not so much as being a visitor draw, although it is. We have hockey teams coming up, and we can guarantee them ice time, or the outdoor rink we could not. And you think about driving up from San Diego to play hockey, and it's too cold or too wet, and you can't play. We're not providing you a great experience. Now we are. And it's amazing for the people that have gone in and talked to. I don't think I've heard anybody complain about the facility. Right. So it's great from that perspective, and we've got other phases to do there. And you talk about where to invest dollars. So when we look at those types of things, a lot of the dollars that were invested there would be illegal to spend on housing. So that's one of the pieces. So that's why it's not there. And again, the value of recreation, the value of housing, same reason we'll spend, a couple of years ago, I think it was $2.7 million or thereabouts on roads and MUPs, redoing them. Well, why do we put money in the roads versus housing? You think about the need of that public infrastructure. Mm-hmm. Same thing with other things. We'll put money into our snow removal equipment. We put money into our police department. We put dollars into our staff in terms of planning and building and inspections and stuff. So all of that works together to make a community. And if you look back, we did a quick analysis from 17-18 to 22-23, 5-year period of time in there. And we spent $50 million on different elements. $30 million of that was in the housing side. And then we did infrastructure, and then we did direct community investment. And by the direct community investment, I mean that was the grants we did for people for housing during the pandemic. That was why we did grants for some of the snow offset cost. We helped keep IMACA running with a $100,000 grant. We've stepped in on a number of different areas of that nature and say, how do we invest in our community in areas that make a big difference? And you think about, I can't make rent. Well, here's the way we can help you. By that sense, I call that a community investment, but we actually kept somebody in housing. And the nice part was we were paying landlords, so they're not kicking people out. Mm-hmm. So it all works together. But that broader focus on what is it? You could ask the question, what does it mean to be a community?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just housing.
It's not just housing. And speaking of housing, if in a perfect world, if you could make all the decisions, if you could wave a wand and fix the housing crisis, what would that look like?
It'd have, I think, 3 elements to it. One, it would be the type and mix of housing. You need stuff on all levels of affordability. Is something I want to attain. And it's different type. Not everybody wants to own a home, and not everybody wants to rent a home. Not everybody wants to live in a condo, and not everybody wants to live in a single-family residence. So you'd want that mix of housing, for one. Secondly, the idea of being compact, in a downtown area or in an area where it actually supports community. I can walk down and go shopping. That's one thing I like about small communities. You can ride your bike. You can get there. You can walk to school. Growing up doing that, it creates the identity of knowing your neighbor and how well then do you get along and those things. So that compactness of the housing just in terms of a community. And then right now, the other thing we'd shake the wand for would be having the land to be able to do it. So federal government, give us 100 acres, we'll take care of our housing problem. Those types of issues. But so having the capacity to do it, having the mix and type of housing, and then the integration of that housing to build the idea of connections and community.
Have there been talks with the Forest Service to trade land or such?
Yeah, the Forest Service has a couple ways to do that. The recent farm bill that went through, you can actually work at certain administrative sites, like here in town. They can actually do some housing on those. It's a 5 to 7 year. I think the one place in Colorado that did this took them 10, I believe, White River Forest. But the element there is it's very expensive. They'll provide the land, but you got to figure out how to build the housing. And then the offset is they can put their employees in there at reasonable prices and things of that nature. You can actually do land exchanges. They're very expensive and long. We've talked about it. The approach I'd love to take would be more of a legislative appeal. Like, hey, here we are surrounded by the national forest. We need to provide recreational opportunity. We need to provide housing opportunities, public purpose type elements. Is there a way to just have Congress actually donate, if you will, which they can legally do? It's their land. You can turn around and go, here is 50 acres or 60 acres for these public purposes. You can't make money on it. So there's a bunch of restrictions that come with it, which are great. Mm-hmm. You can do housing on it. You could do a park on it. You could do some public benefits type stuff on it. Or you can go through the land exchange process where you buy it or you trade land, buy land that they want, and you trade, kind of what the Mammoth Mountain did recently just completed recently. It's a number of years in the works. Been involved in several of those in other areas. Mm-hmm. They can work. They're not inexpensive for the cost of land. Mm-hmm. But that would be ideal there. And the idea that if you're going to build a neighborhood, what else do you build with it? So it's actually a neighborhood, not just housing.
Yeah, like a suburb.
Yeah. So how do you put a park in there? How do you, does it speak to the trails and the connections that we have in this community? Mm-hmm. You think about a sidewalk, just being able to walk or bike or have a bus stop close by you can drive to, but hey, how do I utilize these other facilities? Mm-hmm. And that connection.
And there have been some of these talks because the town owns a few parcels, right? There's a bell-shaped parcel.
Correct.
The foundation as well. Are there any plans in the works to build housing on those parcels?
We've laid it out as concepts. The bell-shaped parcel is one the town owns. We call it that, middle of town, because if you look at it, right, it looks like a bell. Mm-hmm. And looking at that one, though, the idea would be, one, it's currently zoned open space. The town purchased it for kind of that element. You can do recreational on it. So you think about that in the middle of town, 15, 16 acres of land. Could you do, I'll say, a lower density type housing, missing middle type housing, whether it's a duplex or maybe some smaller single family or a fourplex or something of that nature. So you get a mix of housing in there. Mm-hmm. But could you bifurcate that and have half of that be your new kind of outdoor performance center? Could it be recreational type elements in there? And how can it mix those two together there, meet that recreational need? We currently have a lot of outdoor events at the wood site.
Right.
that is private property, ultimately will go away. Where do those events go? Could we build something of that nature?
That'd be nice.
Kind of like a big, an outdoor amphitheater in a sense, and be able to manage it right, but also have some historical significance there about, mining in Mammoth, or, we always joke about it'd be cool to have like some of these old cabins from the community together, and how do those become classic, historical elements, whether it's museum component or even docents. And here's a feel of just a piece of Mammoth history that you could go experience as people are in town. A whole nother element, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but how do you take that and get creative in that, and then respecting the neighborhood that's around it, but also knowing the need for housing? We've had discussions with the foundation, for example, on their property, and what does that begin to look like? Similar type concept.
Those two parcels are just gorgeous, and I imagine I would love to have a place right there by the foundation.
Yeah.
And I want to touch on this real quick. The bell-shaped parcel, a lot of people say it's a wetland. Is it?
We actually had a delineation done. It's a process. I believe it came out with less than an acre that is actually wetland, definitionally. So that's pretty easy to address.
Okay.
It'd be nice to have some water feature through there if you can keep it.
There you go.
But it's not wet all the time. And so when I say wetlands, that's actually a legal definition and what that means. And again, the delineation you have to do, there's a whole study process you go through. It was extremely small.
Mm-hmm. There's been, and I imagine this would happen with the bell-shaped parcel, there's a row of homes, they probably paid a price to have some peace and quiet in their backyard. And, we went through a similar thing with the new bus stop, the Teal Line, going all the way to Woodman. Tons of people spoke up about that, saying, we need it, we don't need it. How difficult is that to address? And when do you have to draw the line where it's like the benefits outweigh the cons, per se?
Yeah, you want to be respectful of the community that's there. And that's a key issue. How do you what are the concerns? And can you actually address them and still provide the public benefit? The Woodman turnaround is a good example of needing bus service out Old Mammoth Road. Where can you turn it? Where does it work? Where will drivers turn? Weather, et cetera. And it's interesting on that one. It actually works well. And since we've been doing it, I haven't heard complaints. I'm sure there's some. But also hearing from people goes, I'm glad you're doing this. We actually had a couple of folks who go, I really support this, but I really can't say anything because I don't want my neighbors to be mad at me, which you feel for that situation. That's bad, just general. But ultimately, we do have a responsibility to the public at large as well as to the individual property owner. And one of the challenges, and I'll say the bell-shaped parcel this way too, is yes, you live next to public property. There's no guarantee that it'll stay in its current situation. Ultimately, we have a right to work through that. There's a process. There's legal things you got to do. But what's that greater benefit if you want to look at it that way? And again, the same thing is how do you transition from some of those very nice single family or condos in there to here's a less dense to more dense? How do you get a buffer? How do you respect those areas to the extent you can? The same thing, the challenge becomes we need housing in Mammoth. Just don't put it next to me.
Right. Yeah.
So you struggle with that a little bit, but you try to work through those issues as the best you can. And we did some stuff on the Woodman turnaround to try to address some of that. We've got a little more to do yet. But overall, I think it's working. But we're still early in the process. Classic example of that was the CRC, Community Recreation Center, right? You're putting it right in the middle of what we'd call surrounded by condos in a park that, hey, leave the park open. It's sagebrush primarily, but that's our open space. Well, it's actually public land that how do we use it to meet other needs that are driving those decisions? And all of that is difficult at times, and you hate to say winners and losers. In some case, people will feel that way. I like to look at it, did we actually enhance the quality of life of the majority of the community? Again, you're living right next to it. We haven't had a lot of complaints there either. We had to adjust some lights that were actually the wrong fixture to reduce some glare on some neighbors.
Okay.
Which, yeah, so you get that, oh, good point. We can fix that.
Got it.
So it's been pretty minimal in terms of challenges there.
Got it.
But when you have that public lands, it's one of the elements. If you really want to protect it, would you like to buy it? If you own it, great. I have no problem with that. People will sometimes buy 2 lots in a subdivision, build in the middle because they don't want the neighbors. Great. Great idea. Versus arguing over, hey, don't build next to me type thing.
Totally.
Again, obviously it's expensive, but as you walk into those things, you're weighing that community, public, and again, it's difficult and some very hard choices get made through that process. But end of the day, hopefully I'll say hopefully, but in our mind, or my mind at least, you're trying to do that. So is it the right decision? And I've got to get up every morning, look myself in the mirror and say, did we do something right?
Right. And speaking of that, were there any times in your career where you felt maybe ashamed that you did something and maybe, the next morning you look at yourself in the mirror and you said, maybe that was the wrong decision?
I've had those issues. I don't second guessing some of the stuff. I wouldn't say absolute wrong. A couple of things out there, like we could have done that better. We could have made a couple of modifications and probably had a better project. Definitely some of that. I'll say yes. Monday morning quarterbacking. So that's just a Monday night game. The element there, though, but you look at that and go, yeah, we could have done better. Or, yeah, it'll work. But so, yeah, there's been some of that, but I'd say very little into the day. And you could make the argument, could you always do a little bit better? Probably. But you do the best as you can with what you know and what you have. We work a lot of times, I'll say, in the gray area. You don't have 100% of the facts and everything. Otherwise, you'll analyze and do nothing. Ultimately, you move forward and try to get certain things done. And it's a give and take through that. But I think if you get that input and the engagement, you tend to have a better project at the end. So that hopefully people are proud of and part of, and some are not going to be happy, and that's, welcome to civilization.
Yeah. Could you tell us like an example of maybe something that the town could have done a little better?
Right off the top of my head, I'm trying to think a couple different things. I think in terms of how I'll say some of the just public outreach on some issues could be stronger, working through that. There's when we take actions on certain things, afterwards, like, hey, we could have handled just the information better, getting the understanding out, those types of elements. There's always that type of room for improvement. More that's process more than the actual outcome. The CRC, could we afforded it? I'd love to have what I would call a stick built, a really nice, type of facility. But if we waited for that, we would not have anything. Just the price tags were so far out of whack. I'll say we're doing that. Now and again, you'll spend money on a plan and then go, probably it's not the right plan. It's not going to happen. Those types of issues. Or we've done other small projects at times that we could spend more time on.
That makes sense.
Not a lot of good examples there, but
yeah.
As the community, they can probably point to several.
Yeah, yeah,
so,
right, as a community.
Yeah.
So you've been town manager for almost 10 years and 5 months, or,
Yep, right in there.
Tomorrow it'll be 5 months.
Yeah.
And so in your perspective, how did the town look like right when you got hired, and what's the biggest change as of today?
I think it's, I'm going to say it's been the public investments. When I first got here, we were, our police station was rented space, actually where Distant Brewing is today. But I remember looking at that and go, this doesn't instill a sense of pride in a police department. So we wanted to change that, and we did. We built a new police station. The lack of sidewalks on Main Street, it's like people are walking. Now they still walk in the street a fair amount, but it putting those in and saying, here is a safer way for people to be on Main Street. The expansion of the MUPs that were in town, the multi-use paths, Mammoth has a great network of those, and we've been able to expand that out. You'll look at the parking lot at Whitmore. First got here, it rained, and it was like a big mud hole. So how do we fix that on the easy side? And it was using a lot of grinding material to do that. It's up for full repave today, which say that should be a priority to get done. Because you're watching how people go in and use it and go, okay, that's not as good as it could be. paving the parking lot out by the propane tanks. That was just a dirt lot. We did some grindings. We did an overlay. It's a popular place for recreation. The work with the Forest Service and a lot of the trail programs that we have in place and being able to maintain them and keep them. And people utilize all the time. And this is back to people complain. I was like, just going down to Rainbow Falls here a while back. But busy trail, right? And if people are local, man, all these people down here. But you're talking to people on the trail, they're just having a great time. Yeah. They're not, there's extra people. Okay, great. We're all here having a wonderful time. Yeah. They're the last ones that complain about too many people because they're there. It's going to Disneyland. I'd love to have the park to myself. Whatever, those types of things. But to see that type of, I'll say that public investment side, and that's in streets, it's in sidewalks, it's in our MUPs, it's in our recreation facilities, it's the remodel of the community center. It's, those types of things. It's putting in a new restroom, a new park, thing. So, but you look at those types of things where a lot of that was in the planning process, and actually being able to implement those things, that has a sense of accomplishment. And in reality checks, the police station, for example, we had a beautiful design for one. Got here, it was I can't remember exact size and stuff, but it was 12 or 13,000 square feet. It was $15 million project, something of that nature. And that's a really nice design. We're not going to build it. We can't afford that. That just isn't reality. And so we made one that worked and provided the services. And so being realistic in those types of elements are also very important. And I think seeing that type of public investment, and then more recently, the Housing Now program, part of the architect to make that come together.
Did you spearhead that project?
Yes, a couple different ways. And then ultimately we had but definitely helping drive the investment and some of the creativity on it. And then you got other really smart people helping implement it, and council members helping negotiate the deal to buy the parcel, for example, those types of things. But you put that together and go, that is going to make a difference in housing in this community in the future. It is today, and it will continue to do so. Will be solve all the issues? Wait and see. But the fact, I know in some of the smaller projects we do where we're actually buying a home and selling it and putting somebody in it, you look at just that. We've done, I think, 5 or 6 of them currently. There's 5 or 6 families that are now in something they can afford. Mm-hmm. You look at it and go, that's good. That feels good. Mm-hmm. Now, do we wish we could do that for 200? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But I'll take the 5. Old adage, a friend of mine's way. What you wish you could do for all, do for one. I wish I could help everybody here, but I can't help this family. I can't help this person. I can lay in the street and help somebody put chains on. Yeah.
Get dirty.
Help them dig out of their car, dig out the snow last storm. But anyway, that idea of sometimes you look like the task is overwhelming. Man, we got all these challenges. Well, let's take on one.
Has the moratorium helped with the housing crisis in any way?
I think it's helped refocus it. A lot of the people that were impacted by the moratorium on short-term rentals definitely, I think, are engaged in the housing discussion in that sense. And if we can keep that momentum where they're engaged and they want to be part of a solution, again, protecting their own interest to a large degree, but what's that next phase? What's that next step look like if we're going to be serious about it? Because even some of the, a lot of the folks there are in the same challenges. I can't hire landscapers. I can't hire people to take care of the cleaning of my home. I can't have, people providing the services I need to be successful in my business. Mm-hmm. So I think as you begin to see that in the reality, over and over we hear again, well, I'll hire you. Do you have a place to live? Yeah. No, I don't. Okay, come back when you do. Mm-hmm. And so that type of, issue there. And so, again, I'll go back and say, big picture, lots of issues there, a lot of things we need to do. But can we help you get into a place to live? Can we help the next person? And, with the parcel coming online, the Sawyer project, 81 units, think about, 80 people in the community in the region here that are likely working in Mammoth or around Mammoth, having a good quality place to live.
Do you think because isn't there a program where if a developer wants to build for, let's talk about maybe the Limelight,
Right.
and they're going to bring in, say, dozens of jobs, and do they have to pay a fee to get out of building housing for their employees?
Yeah, currently we do have a fee program, fee in lieu. It's not unique to Mammoth Lakes. A lot of communities do that. The town went through an area where they had an inclusionary requirement. So for every 10, let's say you're building a subdivision, every 10 units you had to build one affordable. So most of the units, projects that came in were 9.
Okay, just right under.
Yeah. Inclusionary in a hotel project is kind of odd because you're going to say, well, 10 of your hotel rooms have to be housing units. Makes it really hard in terms of that. And then it's funny in talking to some employees, hey, do you want to live where you work at that point? And the answer is most often I got was no. Mainly because I think they're going to be on call all the time to go to work. Hey, you're here. I need you. We're short-staffed. But I think there's a balance in that. And I think it happened to Mammoth to some degree. It's happened to other communities. So you'll put that requirement in, and you don't get any more housing, and you don't get any new development either. And for some folks, that may be fine. If the hotel can't afford to build a hotel and build housing, then they're not coming. And okay, great, not my problem. Which in some cases is true. The same side of that going, if you want that other economic engine to keep going, and you want that some level of economic activity, how do you offset not to where they get a free ride, but how do they pay a fair share? How do they build something? How do they bring some level of housing to the table? The other side of that is, by that same token, we should be saying that is, and this will be to the moratorium issue. Well, if we eliminated a whole lot of short-term rentals, that would reduce demand for housing. It also reduce our revenue stream, which would reduce other things. So maybe the problem would solve itself. This would not be a great place to be. Yeah. You think about those things of that nature. And generally, again, a lot of it's like, well, yes, we have a housing challenge today. So in one sense, you can't require a new person to solve those problems. That's ours to deal with. It needs to be reasonable, a reasonable nexus. And actually, there's a case before the Supreme Court this year regarding what that means, and looks like out of the Tahoe area, El Dorado County is being challenged on some fees they charge. So there is a balance of that of if you want the economic side, how much can you require them to pay before they choose to take their investment elsewhere? Yeah. And we have definitely seen that. I know in talking to a couple different projects and requirements here and the cost of building in Mammoth, the bottom line has been we can make a better rate of return on our investment in other communities. And so, okay, that's their choice, do that. And there's other people willing to invest here as well. But it's that balancing act of, do we want new investment or not? It's the same thing, just the cost of building a home. We're looking at projects, this will be in the parcel area, where they need the market price for those need to be in the $850 to $950 range. Well, how many of us can afford a $900,000 home?
Yeah, not many.
I don't.
Yeah.
Can't. Those elements. But you look at that and say, if that's the cost of housing, which developer, if you come in and go, great, you got to build 100 of those. All right, well, thanks for talking. I mean, at what point do you end up with neither? It's a balancing thing. Should they pay fair share? Should they do some stuff? And we're actually, I know the Limelight Hotel is actively looking at where can we put employee housing and actually help financially to do things. Same discussion with the Main Lodge project coming in, the redeveloping the Main Lodge with Mammoth Mountain. Ongoing discussion, great. You're going to generate a need for X number of employees, translates to X number of housing. How much of that may be cash, but how much of it is on the ground build? How much of it is other mitigation options can you look at? And so you do want them to pay their share, but they're not going to solve our existing gap necessarily either. Maybe it doesn't make it any worse, but they're not going to be able to solve the need today. That's going to take a community-based process to make that happen.
Right. And the whole thing about the moratorium, it almost, we've been to a lot of the meetings, and there's been a lot of great public comment, a lot of great data, very educated people talking about it. And like you said, people are protecting their own self-interest, their own investments. being a real estate agent, we have such an interesting perspective because, for me personally, I have lived in my car. I've lived in a house with 6 other people. But at the same time, we deal with people who are first-time, second home buyers, and they love the area just like all of us, and they want a second home to be here. And, it's a place to, keep some money and build wealth for their family. So it's really hard to be mad at those people when you, see it from that perspective. And so for me, like this moratorium, it seems like a disparity issue, right? It's like, I get it. You get annoyed when there's someone new next to you every other day. You get annoyed when you go to see these beautiful mansions and there's no one in there. And to an extent, it seems like the issue here is like, again, it's, us versus them. Why can't I have that? Why do they have to have that? And I never use it. But I feel like with a lot of these, like a lot of our clients, they have good jobs, but many of them aren't that much better off than, say, someone, even a service worker.
Right.
Maybe they're working for Netflix or another big company, but not making, hundreds of thousands, just enough to get a place here. And so the interesting part to me is, like, why does the town or the council, or, whoever, we can blame it on, why do they have to go after the people who are just doing slightly better, where we're looking at these big corporations, Altera, and now Altera's in hospitality, and, that's where they're building the Limelight. And so why does it seem like these big players are getting off easy?
Yeah, depending what you want to call getting off easy. Because, it's extremely expensive to make that work here. And the Limelight is actually the Crown family, which is an Altera. They're our owner of them, but different group there. But they want to invest in here because they want to provide that product, right? They see this as a valuable place to do that. The same issue can be the folks who built those condos originally, right? They didn't provide housing for the workers that are serving them either. So we haven't. So now it's like, oh, you have wealth, therefore, we assume they do, you should solve our problem, or you should not have to, you can't use existing housing in the community. That type of a question almost. Should they have to do a fair share? Absolutely. And we're working through those things to make that happen and have that partnership to make those things happen. But the same thing when you look at the housing stock in the town, you look at it and go, we have X number of units out there. And I don't think anybody stood up in the whole moratorium discussion and said we don't have a housing crisis. You guys are crazy thinking we do. So didn't hear that comment.
Thankfully.
Yeah. But you look at that and go, if we take part of our existing housing stock, how do we actually allow that to be utilized to meet some of our housing need at a price point that works? No different than the hotel doing that. We could turn around and go, here's 3,500 short-term rental properties. Why shouldn't all of those units who create a demand for jobs be part of the solution? What does that look like? You could say that same pot of wealth individually, you're right. So, some of them are wealth, some are not, some of them are, barely making it. But others, it's like it is a second home, and they do enjoy coming up and fully get that. And frankly, that bed base supports our way of life here in Mammoth. It's the visitor, it's the TOT taxes, all those types of things. But if you take a look at that and say, can we build our way out of the housing crisis? Do we have enough dirt, period? That alone, the wherewithal to build out of it. If we need, one study said 1,200 units of housing, I'm not sure we have the space to build that. If we do, it's going to be, up against somebody. And the cost of that, 80 units at the parcel, for example, a $50+ million project. It's not inexpensive, and that's a bunch of grants and other things helping fund that. So you look at that and go, if we can't build our way out completely, what is a way to actually take a look at what we have and say, is there any way to incentivize a portion of that existing housing to go into the housing stock for a workforce, or people who live here full time? I don't care if they're retired or they're working online or whatever, but they're living here full time. what is that balance? At the same time, we were hearing that, you'll lose money, et cetera, for short-term rentals if I can't rent. And it's not part of the housing problem, but yet we kept hearing that, for the people who are owning units, if they can't rent them, they'll lose 20 or 30% of their value. So, but yet short-term rentals aren't driving up the price of housing. That would seem to be an incongruent argument.
Mm-hmm.
If the value is up there because I can short-term rent, it's that ability to run a business that is helping drive that cost up. Mm-hmm. Now, is the solution a moratorium? That's not going forward that way. But you look at that and say, I was looking at what is the incentive side to say, how do we work in the market to move some of that housing? It's not like all of it, but how do you, a couple of hundred of units would make a huge difference, I believe, getting people now. So what's the process to do that? And cities throughout California and across the West are going through these same issues. New York is having the same issues. So it's not unique to Mammoth. But I think in talking to some counterparts, what was unique is we started putting money in there, say, here's a house that's on the market for $600,000. We'll buy that, make an offer, negotiate, purchase it. We'll discount that by $150,000 or $200,000. So I can put a family in there who now can afford that as a homeowner. The person that sold it did fine. That was their asking price and the negotiation back and forth, arm's length conversation. Yeah. So we'd own that unit and then put somebody in it. And to me, that's a win-win approach because I sold it. I got what I needed out of it. We put a family in there. And whether it could have, if it was being a short-term rental, yes, it'll come out of that pool. But if you look at 3,500 of them, let's say we take 200 out. My guess is the impact, one, financially on the town, we probably won't even notice it, frankly, because of supply and demand and what will happen. Also, if that's, say, 200 families that are now here working and they got secure housing, does that change the experience people have when they're here? What does that mean for the people who are now in that housing and their comfort level of providing great service in the community? So again, how do you do that in a way that is equitable? It's not a simple solution. That probably simplifies it probably more than it needs to. At the same side of that, we'll look at the larger corporations and say, well, they need to solve the problem. Well, if they solve it just for their employees, that's great. But that doesn't do anything for people who are sleeping in their cars or doing other things because now you haven't freed up any housing. In one sense, we may have created a greater demand for more units to be in the second home market. It's a trade-off debate. It's the whole economics of that are challenging. And, I'll say my personal belief is more of a free market push on that. But in Mammoth Lakes, because of our constraints, I'm not sure we have a completely free market. It's not like we can't, hey, let's just go out and buy another 100 acres and expand out our housing. We just don't have that capacity with our land ownership structure, right? So think through that and go, again, ask people on the street, right? Okay, what's the solution for housing of the existing employees here today? Not forget the new ones coming in, if you could wave your wand. How do we solve housing for existing employees who are housing challenged, either by price, by couch surfing, vehicles? I'm poor because I'm paying 60% of my wages in rent. Whatever those impacts are, what's the solution to that? And I think that's a hard question to answer.
And is it one of those things from a town perspective where, maybe I wouldn't say I hope not. The goal would be to, bring down housing prices 20, 30%, like you said. But it does seem like a certain demographic of people who bought into the market, and sometimes they are locals,
right,
who bought into this market, hoping it's their retirement vehicle.
Sure.
Does it ever, from the town, is like, well, some will be quote unquote punished or consequence to this, decision. But it's for the greater good.
Yeah, not so much in the sense punished. I take that out. I think the issue comes into that. One, there's no guarantee prices are going to continue to go up, right? If you live through a few different recessions and ups and downs, 2008 comes to mind. A lot of people, we lost deed-restricted units because the deed restriction price was higher than the market price. So they couldn't sell it. those types of issues. And so the whole process with that. So one, there's no guarantee that value is going to be there. Ideally, you think it's going to generally trend up, but not necessarily guaranteed, right?
Right.
So that's one piece. So the punish side, I think, is the wrong way, looking at it going, especially if you end up in a fair market debate or a discussion that way. Now, if you turn around and go, we're going to take away your right to run a business, we can have that argument of, is that something the town should do? If I look at the short-term rental issue, you are running a business, whether it's one unit or whether you own 3 or 4. And some people are doing that. They're making a living at it, and they're good at it, and that's fine. The question on that always came in is what level of impact are you looking to have? And again, you go back and say, here's the number of units from a practical standpoint, and you can kind of do the math through what we need from a housing element discussion and study. But you look at that and go, it's not like everybody's going to lose that. And also several people that raise valid concerns is, well, are you looking to sell your unit? Well, no, I want to continue to use it. I want to be here. I want to do this, et cetera. And then I want to be able to rent it. I want to, if I'm not here, great. Okay. So you're not part of the solution, obviously, and there's no interest in doing that. Let's say it's worth $500,000. Are you willing to sell for $500,000? No, I think I'll get more later, or I'm willing to ride the market, if you will. So you have those issues too that we're dealing with. And so it's a complicated issue. And I wouldn't say, if you look at a moratorium element, the idea, I'll say the more successful ones, at least I think I'm aware of, if you have like 3,500 units, if you want to do a moratorium, make it 37. Mm-hmm. Bums rush to get there in a hurry to get the next 200. But the idea there, anybody who's currently in that environment, in one sense, we probably just increase their value. Because now it's supply and demand, right?
Right.
Which isn't all bad either, from a property tax base and other elements. The same side of that, those who are currently operating, you haven't really diminished their capability. Right. And so you try to balance stuff off. There's anytime you get into that, non-free market environment, which you start running into those types of issues. So it's a difficult one. And the idea, and wasn't well articulated probably, is what would be the outside goal of that? If you hit X, have you achieved? And again, if you look at the need for what I would say above, we call it the missing middle often, right? Right. People they're not eligible to stay in housing that's subsidized, but they don't make enough money to buy something or rent a lot of things in the town. What is that kind of magic number in there too? Is that another 200 or 300 units? We're going to end up with 400 or 500 units of low income, deed restricted income levels. How does that change the dynamics of the town from an employee base, from a housing base? Mm-hmm. Especially if you're, as we buy stuff and do it, we restrict it so it can't go back into a short-term market. Future sell of that unit needs to also be deed restricted on price. So the idea is you get permanent affordability over time, up or down a little. So they can still make some appreciation on it, but not the same as if it was open in the marketplace. But they're also getting into it at a price that they otherwise couldn't afford. So so you're trading that off with individuals in that way. But again, it's a tough issue. It's not one that we're not alone in trying to address it. Mm-hmm. You definitely want to be able to put new stuff on the market. You want to be able to acquire existing stuff that you can, put people in and make that work for them and work for the community. Same. It's a complicated, and the actions taken at times. You can look at it winners and losers. In some cases, that's probably a valid perspective. The other side, if you're the one that got into a house as a place to live, you consider yourself one of the winners. Yeah. Those types of issues. Yeah. It's tough.
Nothing's as straightforward as you wish it could
be. I wish it was.
Yeah. Yes. What are some things that you're going to miss about Mammoth?
Well, one, it's a great ski hill, so
that's a good one,
and it's close.
Yeah.
So that's kind of easy, but it's 5 to 7 minutes. You can be skiing in one of the best mountains in the country, maybe the world. I don't know. I haven't skied in a lot of other places, but anyway, great place to do that. So, that recreational component. But I think the other element of missing, and I'll go back to the idea of community, of a lot of different connections in town. And those are things you hope to stay connected to. And it's, you're walking down the street and you see somebody, you can stop and visit, them by name. They see you, they want to stop and say hi. It's that closeness of the community, the knitness of it. I think that really, to me, makes a huge difference of what I want to be a part of. And I think, for me, retirement's great. It's time. It's, stage of life, other things, other issues there. But the idea is coming into that and going, made a difference. And the other, from a work perspective, downside is, man, we've got 3 or 4 more things coming and love to be a part of. My wife will tell me, yeah, but you always have 3 or 4 more things coming you want to be a part of. So never ending. But I think that sense of accomplishment feels really good. And so some of that work drive, and that'll be missed in one sense, in a different chapter of life going forward. But that connection and those things that way, and, the feel and the location and those personal connections, that's always, I think, the more difficult part, especially when it all gels together. That's always difficult. But moving back to family, moving back to same opportunities, different location, another beautiful place, et cetera, colder. Yeah. But I'll look forward to that too.
Sounds really nice. And one last question. If we were in an auditorium with everyone who visits Mammoth, to all the locals, to all your colleagues, what would be the one thing you would say to them?
Thank you. I've been privileged to work in a position that I enjoy. I've been privileged to see things come forward that benefit this community. I've been privileged to get to know and be engaged with some really smart, intelligent, fun people, to have a job that I've been able to excel at and really enjoy. And that is because of the community that we have here. It's because of visitors that come and spend and do stuff. It's because of the commitment of people that have lived here for decades and those that have lived here for weeks. They all come together. So I would have to say thank you.
And thank you. And your past 10 years here, all your hard work does not go unnoticed, and you're definitely going to be missed. Hopefully you can come visit. Yes. And see these.
I plan to do that.
Okay, good. And just see more things come to fruition. Yeah. And if there's anything we can do for you, let us know. And yeah, thank you, Dan.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. It truly has. I've been blessed to be here.